Bet you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. It is Freewheeling Friday. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right, we got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to dive right into it. Okay, it is Freewheeling Friday, and I will try to get to, of course, a bunch of your questions. Maybe save some time for that at the end of the day. But I'm going, of course, to address last night, because I have something to say about it. But first, I just want to get flat right in to the results. Because what I'm seeing, this is the national. For those of you waiting for PA, that will be out with CD Media later. I can't talk about it until we publish it there. Okay, so we're going to start with the national polling, and I'll tell you what I think is important, because there are media narratives, there are things we're seeing with polls. And then there are assumptions made from what they're seeing that creates these narratives, all right? And there are some things that you can see, but not derive the same assumptions as they're deriving. And we're going to go over that. I know that's a little bit confusing, but just bear with me, all right? Let's get into it. Make it bigger so everybody can see it. All right. So this is important because, and here, I'm actually going to show myself for a little bit here. This is important because it is a pre-Labor Day survey. And it is basically a baseline. Before Labor Day happens, we've had all this year of generic ballot polling, of Joe Biden approval polling, et cetera, et cetera. All right. We've had all that year, and we kind of saw what we saw as the underlying political environment, asking independents and those who call themselves something else, a third-party voter, where they lean. Okay, regardless of whether you're an independent, you're something else. But if you had to, would you say you identify more with the Republican Party here on these issues or the Democratic Party? Or maybe you share little in common with either. Or maybe you're about 50-50. And without a doubt, this entire cycle, they have leaned toward Republicans. Independents, especially. All right? Now, sometimes it was a little bit closer, sometimes it wasn't. But overall, throughout that entire time period, we definitely saw what we saw happening. I spoke a little bit about Wednesday. On Wednesday, I spoke a little bit about what is happening. Is there a response bias in the summer? There is. Does it hurt Republicans? It does. What does it look like? What does it mean for a pollster? Before I even get into this, let me give you an example. It is hard to get certain groups of people, whether they identify as a Republican or not, as irrelevant. They are a Republican voter or a leaning voter. All right, working class, men. All right. Working class, but, I hate to say it, no college degree, certain, age groups, right, that tell us they're more likely, of course, or very likely to be a Republican leaning voter. They are difficult to reach. And then when you do reach them, they either don't want to complete the survey, which you got to try to make short. That's where we've been in this before. All right. Why I wanted to make this survey smaller than other public polling projects. But then also you get crap like, who did you vote for in 2020? I can't remember. All right, well, is the country headed on the right track or the wrong track? I don't know. Do you approve or disapprove of the job Joe Biden's doing? I'm undecided. Okay, how are you going to vote in November? I'm not sure yet. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of so-and-so and so-and-so? Hey, I don't know. Never heard of them. This is a very typical response bias. And why we get these who even stay on the line, where do they start to really tell you the truth, which is we're going to look at in the social bias indicators. Tell us how comfortable you are discussing your political beliefs, such as how you intend to vote, being truthful with the following people: your friends, your family, your neighbor, your coworker, perfect strangers. or the kit and caboodle here, pollsters. And that would be the only damn thing they answer. What we saw this month was definitely that. All right. And and I want you to keep that in mind as we go. All right. Regional distribution. Let's take a look at that first before we go into the crosstabs, which I will, it's just like, if I make it too big, let me see how that looks for you guys. I know some people are always like, look, I can't see those damn crosstabs. And I get it. They're small. All right. We'll try to keep it right around there. That's better. I mean, all right. Let's look at participation in the mainland and in non-contiguous states, which is obviously going to be a little bit more difficult to see with Hawaii and really nothing in Alaska. Not enough to even shave. There was one very rural response in the state of Alaska. While there was several in Hawaii, it happens, but generally speaking, the participation of this poll was not bad. It really wasn't. Why, Rich, are all the plain states and the western states? Well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. They're low population areas, and it is difficult to get that. Remember this, what this means here? This is not every single interview. What it is showing you how closely they are grouped together is how many in a specific area, maybe a state, for instance. If they're closely knit, then obviously we spoke to more of them. The darker the circle is, the more interviews in that area were conducted, in that specific location were conducted. All right. And by that means city, stuff like that. Maybe county. All right. Something to the effect. All right. Let's look at just the mainland, get a little bit closer look. All right. There we have it. Not bad. Florida, a lot of course, very a lot of metro areas, but overall, look at states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, not bad. Pennsylvania, very good. I mean, even states, southern states like Georgia, Florida, not bad. Texas, not bad. A lot in California, it. Coastal in Portland, it. That's just the way it goes. But overall, for over 2,100 interviews that are being counted anyway, it's not. I'm happy with it. All right. All right. With that being said, let's take a look at some of this was because I made a big deal for a few reasons, and one I can't talk to you about yet, but stay tuned. Some hopefully pretty cool things coming, but stay tuned. This was important because this one right here, and am I in the way of it? I may have to remove myself so you can see it. Not totally, but let's just do it. All right. This right here, and then you can see enthusiasm. I was blocking, so I wanted to move it. Unlikely to vote, meaning the odds are greater than 0, but less than 50-50. Somebody had asked me, Rich, why don't you do a 10, 1 to 10 scale like other pollsters do? And it seems like it gives more. That is a very, very good observation. We used to do that, and we used to consider that. We will start to, add a few more things as we get closer. People probably remember in 2020 how we did it. But generally what I'm trying to do for you is show you something akin to the voter models that we ran. Think back to Virginia, guys, in 2021. I said, this is the 50 and over group. This is what the electorate will look like, 50% above, meaning this is likely, right? 50 and above is like more likely than not, or likely to vote. Odds are greater than 50-50. Certain to vote is basically 90 to 100%. They're going to vote. They have vote history. And then unlikely to vote, the odds are greater than 0, but less than 50-50. Maybe they're telling us, and they're being deadly serious and persisting. I have no midterm vote history, but I'm voting this time. Right? Think Emerson in Arizona versus us in Arizona. Kerry Lake had voters that never participated in an Arizona primary before. Emerson screened them out. They had Karen Taylor Robson winning. The same thing happened to them in Wisconsin. I'm trying not to screen out people too early here. In the end, maybe some of them don't vote. But right now, before Labor Day, I'm trying to cast not a registered voter net, a wide registered voter net, but I'm trying to cast a net that is at least, a big likely voter net that will not miss some of these people. All right. So I hope that makes sense to you guys for now. All right, so let's look at a couple of groups here first, just to look at who's likely to vote, who's not as of right now. You can see men are far more likely to vote than women. This likely voter model is about 49% male and 51% female. Some people are going to say, this is too male. This is too, this is too masculine of an electorate. Go look at the 2018 exit polls. Go look at a bunch of midterm exit polls, and you will see, and that voter file confirms that is absolutely the case. It is not a presidential election cycle. And so I'm very, very, very confident that I am right. Men will vote at a higher rate than 47%, or a higher rate. About 80 is what we got here, basically. But let's say, 80% certain in this, right? Which would probably result in somewhere in along 50-something% turnout, right? 50 to 60 maybe. But the bottom line is they will make up more than 47% of the electorate. What does this mean by the way, what does this mean? It means in states like Wisconsin, it's going to benefit Tim Michaels. It means in states like Michigan, where we have seen, and Ohio, where we have seen, in Wisconsin, for instance, Walker won. He drove male turnout all the way to 51% of the electorate. Routinely, Scott Walker did it. All right, so it will benefit Republicans if this continues, which I expect it will, because this is not, even when we were still releasing registered voter numbers along with, likely voter screens, we were showing you, look at how more likely men. This has been going on now for a while. All right. With the exception of some states, maybe I've polled here and there, districts here and there. All right. Look at age. Age detail. Same thing, showing the same pattern. Okay. 18 to 29, only 3% are certain to vote. 30 to 44, only 64%. When you get to the 45 to 64, you start to really see, some gains here. And then 65 plus. Midterm turnouts tend to be older. That is true. 18 was younger than usual, but it was still only 12%. 18 to 29 was only a total of 12%. We're at about 13 right now. 18 to 24, only 47% are likely to turn out. That's why, by the way, sometimes 18 to 24 is a bigger group than 25 to 29, but they are much more likely to vote here. 30 to 39, 63. This is an important group. We're going to talk about this more as we look at the generic ballot and we look at the 2024 rematch. 40 to 49, you can see the same trend here. The older we get, the more likely they are to vote. Okay, let's scoot over a little bit. And just remember, certain, likely, unlikely. Actually, I could just do this. Let's just do this. So I don't have to worry about all this other stuff. Okay. Let's get into race. Whites, 78% likely to vote. Something very important here I want you to keep your eye on. African Americans, only 64%. Hispanics and Latinos, folks, you do not see this often in a national poll. Black voters, in my experience, are always either the second, sometimes first, when it comes to, I'm definitely voting certain. Absolutely. Their turnout rates can exceed whites. Asian turnout rates are typically pretty decent. And that's why we're seeing that here. They're actually just beneath whites. But exceeding African American turnout is Hispanic and Latino. And these are very small samples. So, it is what it is. These other groups, the other, which is the largest outside of American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, the other is actually more than any of these two groups. This one tends to be more liberal. This one can be more conservative, just so if people are wondering. And that's really not tens. That's the way it is. Republicans are more likely to vote than Democrats. All right, so this is, again, a big deal. Going beyond partisan profile. Conservatives are more likely than liberals to say they are certain to vote. And considering there are more of them, that disproportionately impacts the ideological electorate composition of the electorate. This looks a little bit like Virginia to me. where conservatives were, and I don't mean that in like there's going to be this 12-point swing. What I'm saying is moderates are so much lower, and they typically are, but this is very low. This is a big disparity. Moderates are so much lower that they don't come anywhere near their 40%. Conservatives get much closer to 40, and liberals end up more like 22. And right now in our polling, which I'll put this PDF out for everybody, it'll show you all the participation rates and the sample sizes and the percentage that each made up, right? All right, so unaffiliated leanings. This is one bright spot here. This is of people who were asked if they are independents or something else. The one thing that Democrats have going for them, even though independents and third-party voters they align more closely with Republicans this year, according to what they say. Even though that tends to be the case, it's just like 1 point Democratic leaners are more likely to vote. But overall, it's just not helping with some of this other stuff. Look at some of these other groups, okay? I know we're the only ones who do this, but it's critical here. You remember this from 2020 if you've been a fan a while. English, that's like, I'm American, I'm English, home of the WASP, all right? They're always pretty highly likely to vote, but you have some of these other ones on par with them this time that have moved considerably more Republican in recent years, to include Germans, Irish, and Italian. Italians being 82.2% certain, French 85, Polish 85, Russian 86. All right, I know they're smaller samples, but it is what it is. Look at Norwegian, by the way. Keep an eye on Norwegian. That's a big deal when it comes to the Rust Belt. All right. We have Hispanic details here. Cubans being far more likely than a lot of these other groups, but still Puerto Ricans to 85.8%. I believe they were the most likely. But, overall Mexican being the biggest group, actually 67.1. So, and by the way, that can definitely impact if you don't, make sure that you have enough of subgroups. It can impact the overall race. Indians, as in Asian Indians, all right, from India are extremely likely to vote, as are Japanese, all right. If you are employed full-time, you're more likely to vote. If you're a student, actually, I found interesting, they actually score pretty high, but it's a very small group, a subsample group. So, with that small samples like that, maybe it's not worth inferring anything. It jumped out at me, all right. Retired, as always, almost always, most likely to vote, and happens to be a very large group, second only to employed full-time. By the way, it does look like employment fell this month, which the jobs report just came out. If we have a lot of time, we can get into it. But unemployment went up, unemployed persons went up. So, I'm pretty happy with the result. A small business owner, no, is more likely to vote than yes. People who aren't making that much in income are less likely to vote than people who are making more. Union households are slightly lagging non-union households, but of course, public unions are exceeding private in certainty to vote. Right? College degrees, some college, a very good Trump Republican group this year is lagging in the 4-year degree and the advanced degree. I told you these people always vote. This is going to come in. We're going to talk more about this when we look at most important issues. All right. And of course, it's just more of education detail. All right. Now, off-centering some of that, or who are these subgroups? Married people are more likely, and widowed people are more likely. They tend to obviously be seniors than people who are divorced, separated, and/or single. People who have children are more likely than people who do not to vote. Veterans are far more likely than military, active duty military to vote. They're also more likely than non-military or veteran to vote. This is very interesting. Protestants tend to be the most likely. There has been an uptick of people who have no religion. They're lagging considerably this month. Catholics are very close to Protestants and or other Christians, which when we look at some of this by religion, when it comes to the generic ballot in Trump v. Biden, is obviously a big deal. Republicans aren't doing that bad among Protestants. They're not doing as good as we've seen in recent months, but that's not what's doing it. Trump is doing better with Catholics than generic Republicans. Why does that matter? The Hispanic vote. That's why it matters. Evangelicals, are basically just as likely as non-evangelical Protestants and other Christians to say that they're going to vote. Urban, slightly more, than rural, but everyone's pretty much on par, which is why, by the way, I think we're going to see a bigger rural vote than we normally see. Urban voters tend to say, I'm absolutely going to vote. Yet this month, we are seeing rural voters just basically, it's parity. All right. The Northeast is a little bit less likely than the rest of the country to vote, which is why you see they are not 20-something% in our poll. They are not in the voter file. For the crying out, it's like all these media polls, like Northeast 25%, Northeast 24, 23. Since when? There's like 17 to 21% at best. They have been losing population like crazy. Every year you can expect the overall composition of the electorate to be less and less Northeast and more South. And to some extent in Western states. But the Northeast only 72 compared to the Midwest 74, the West 82, and the South 75. This keeps up. The South may end up could be 37%. Which would obviously be a very big deal. All right. Some quick ones on enthusiasm, and then we're just going to move on. All right. Because we'll look at this when we look at other stuff. Extremely enthusiastic, about 48% totally. 23.4 very. We've been over this a lot. Those other responses on the scale really just tend to not have that kind of predictive value that extremely does. And Robert Barnes and I, in What Are the Odds ahead of 2020, got into this a lot and went into a lot of history. If you ever want to go back and look at those episodes and check it out. But there just isn't the impact from some of these other, intensities. Men, not surprising. They are more certain to vote this year than females. Not surprising. Men are more, they say they're more extremely enthusiastic. Young people are not. About a third of voters, 18 to 29, are extremely enthusiastic, and that is tilted considerably to the 25 to 29 range because only about a quarter of 18 to 24 are extremely enthusiastic. This 30 to 34 could be critical this year because how could I put this? Glenn Youngkin got very close with the 18 to 29 crowd because of who came out to vote, not just because some of them changed their minds. If Republicans, disproportionately push out their voters in the 30 to 44, then they can make it closer. Of course, we've talked about their turnout issue without Trump being on the ballot. I don't know after last night. We will see how things change in a month or so. But after last night, he may have, Joe Biden being he may have really stepped in a big pile of you know what. Because, people will get more afraid. But they know that secret. They know how they vote a secret. 45 to 64, that's when we start to see majority. And 65 plus is when we start to see closer to 6 and 10, almost 2/3. All right. Again, interesting to me, whites are about 50%, extremely American, Indian, Alaska Native, small samples. But what I'm concerned about here is Black and African American and Latino being pretty much even this time. And when you have the voting likelihood among Hispanics being higher than among Black voters, then it's possible Black voters end up like 11% or maybe 12%. And Hispanics actually start to flex their muscles, don't, end up around 10 or 11, but instead end up to be the 13%. And if that happens, you'd be surprised how much that can change the result. Republicans are much more, they have a 6-point extreme enthusiasm lead. And it's a big deal. Conservatives have a 5-point over liberal extremely enthusiasm. Republican-leaning independents are much more enthusiastic than Democratic-leaning independents, and so on and so forth. And I think you get the idea. Let's get into the rest of this stuff here, the goodies, all right? Right track, wrong track did improve this month. It just didn't improve all that much. It went up from like 22 point something to 24.8. And if you go to Big Data Poll, I've updated those in the front. Scroll down. Some of these trackers I have updated. Biden's approval, I updated. If you know those links, but I'll get there. We'll get to them all as we go. I just wanted to make sure I had this for the show to talk to you about. All right. Wrong track is still at 65%. So we're still in very, very negative territory here. And let me see if I can give you an idea of what that trend looks like. Yeah, I can. Hold on one second. Let's give you a trend here. And because I chose this as a step line instead of a traditional line, it does tend to look like it's exaggerating some of the, some of the jumps. But you can see what it looks like here, a little bit of a block. We've seen this before, only for it to widen back out again. We'll see. We'll just have to keep an eye on it. Nevertheless, it's still horrible. As you can see right here, the spread is still extremely large. Oh, 30 points. 30 point, almost wrong track. I mean, 29.9. It's not fantastic. All right, let's go back to the crossed abs. It's already 12:28. I'm trying to get in here as much as I can today. All right, everyone is, ironically, we were just talking about the male versus female. Men are more likely to be right direction, but they're also more likely to be wrong track. And it's just because there are a lot less undecided men in this situation, or unsure, no opinion, than females. And that's what that comes down to. I'm going to skip over the Registered Voter Economic Confidence Index. We'll have to do probably another whole show on that because you know how big it is. But let's go to Biden's approval. People are going to say, hey, is there a bounce back? Considering he's always hovering around 38, 39 with us, to come in at, 40 flat isn't really a bounce back. And you can see that in the trend. I mean, it's within the sampling era of the survey. But I do think that it's at least clear that he's not like in the mid 30s, not with us anyway. And let me give you that as well, because that's important. All right. So this is what the trend looks like on Biden's approval rating. And as you can see, this is when, he was net positive. He's been net negative for a while. And even this month, he's still net almost, over. He's net negative 16 plus. And this does not include, I just saw your comment in the corner. This does not include anything from that speech. No. And it would take some time before it would, but, this is still a historically bad number headed into a first term midterm election. This has got to be stated over and over again. Obama got his butt kicked and he was at 47%. Trump was still in the 40s. They lost the House. Biden, maybe on the RCP average, because you have some real doozies skewing the average. But everybody else is at 38 to 40 like we are. Trafalgar's right in the middle of us and Reuters. Believe me, he's at 38 to 40, 38 to 40. And maybe here's the kicker. You can only do so much. With the response bias, he probably is lower. Probably is at 38, 39. I mean, to see other pollsters do that, probably. But this is what we got this month. But he is nowhere in hell, at Fox level, stuff like that. And even if he was, it would still be historical danger zone. This is what we got to keep in mind. Because when we talk about why we saw what we saw with the generic ballot this month, you have to ask yourself, well, okay, with those voters who either shifted back to undecided or have remained undecided, judging by what we know about them, judging by those characteristics, are they likely to vote Democratic on the, in the House ballot? Hold on, let me get a sip of water. Well, it doesn't. The answer is no. Even if the right track, wrong track, improved by 5 points, it's still negative 30. Negative 30. That's decimation territory, folks. And as you can see here, 42% of Americans strongly disapprove, less than 16% strongly approve. All right. Economy is almost mirrored his overall. it's a little bit worse because of strong disapproval, but I want to go to inflation. Holy moly. This is where Republicans are screwing up. They're not keeping up with the debate about inflation. If they just used my tagline the entire time, they wouldn't have to worry about keeping up because it just fluctuates between them constantly. Grocery store to the gas pump and all the way back home. Hear it with me. Grocery store to the gas pump and all the way back home. Remember that. Inflation, 10% strongly approve the job Joe Biden's doing. Handling inflation, about half the country strongly disapproves. His approval is less than 30% on inflation. Immigration and border security, 34% approve, while almost 58% disapprove. And if you were rounding up, people would say, while over 58%. If you were rounding up, you'd be to 59. All right. Foreign policy, 37% approve, 55% disapprove. I'm, ballparking it. Crime, going down the major issues in which we measure a president, okay? About 35% approve of the job Joe Biden is doing on crime. About 57% disapprove. U.S.-China relations. Ugh. Right? Ugh. 31% approve and damn near 60% disapprove. Almost. Chuck Schumer favorability. Oh, I got to do my little thing real quick. Hold on one second. Just keep looking at that first. Chill. You can see Schumer's always been a hell of a, what's the word I'm looking for? He's still got all these people who don't really know what to think of him. And because of that, he's able to do a lot better than Aaron. I just saw, thank you, Aaron, for your super chat. I just saw what you wrote. That's funny. But if you want, Aaron, if you're already a member of Locals, if you got a super chat, it's like $5 a month to become a member of Locals. YouTube's going to take like 30% of your money. Although, of course, I appreciate them. I just want you to know that. So basically, Chuck Schumer has been able to kind of hide out and be low key, although he still is he's still negative. He's done a better job than others. All right. But first, let me tell you about my buddies over at 4 Patriots, all right? We're actually going to talk about inflation and this in a second. A food shortage could be coming even in the U.S. That's what experts were saying just as recent as July. Drought, inflation, and even new policies are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits, like Laura and I do. It's not ordinary food. We're talking good for 24 years, super survival food. Handpicked right in a family-owned facility in the US of A. The kits are compact. We love them. Sturdy, easily to stack, water-resistant. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunch, dinners. My favorite is the stew. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Folks, go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. Watch that video, scroll down, read all the stuff about it. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile today. This way, when the you-know-what hits the fan, you'll be ready to roll like Laura and I are. 4 Patriots. Delicious cocoa for the kids. Super cool free gifts that come along with your kit. Go take some time, read over that URL, and you will not be disappointed. All right. Let's see. Let's get back to the crosstabs here. All right. And like I said before, we personally use this stuff, and I will never talk about anything we don't. All right. Going to Schumer's favorability. He's done a good job. I wonder what happened. I'm serious. Sometimes he's even at like 40%. No more. Chuck Schumer had a pretty unfavorable look today. Look, it's still better than the rest, but this month, you were like 31% unfavorable, 14% very unfavorable, 14% somewhat unfavorable, only 12% very favorable. All right. So we're looking at like, in the 30s, while he's, but still watch this. What about his counterpart? Mitch pulled the fire alarm, McConnell. Save yourselves, everybody. What about him? Oh my God. 60%, 61% unfavorable combined, and only, actually, I shouldn't even give him it, less than 6% very favorable, ladies and gentlemen. A quarter of the country have at least a somewhat favorable opinion of Mitch McConnell. Before we take a walk out of here, let's look by party, shall we? Hold on. Let me get this. Let's look by party. Oh, and I'll put the party group in there, but right now I still have it separated out. Oh, my Lord. 3.1% of independents. At least he got lucky this month, and there are slightly more Republicans than Democrats who have a very favorable opinion of him. Usually, Republicans are even less than Democrats on very favorable when it comes to Mitch McConnell. 5.8% among third-party voters. Congratulations, Mitch. It really is one hell of a feat, folks, to be this unpopular. Unbelievable. I just don't see how you can change the identity of your party. I don't know how that can happen. If you're, in a positive direction with somebody who's so loath. Now, check this out. Still, though, he may have a greater overall unfavorable opinion than anybody else typically, but his very unfavorable is at least around a third. Look at Nancy Pelosi. 46% have a very unfavorable opinion of Nancy Pelosi. Why does this matter? Republicans have been very successful running against Nancy Pelosi. In the era of Obama, they really had no other choice because Obama was popular. His policies weren't. You should maybe kind of look back to what worked. But you can see here, Republicans can't stand her. Independents can't stand her. 81% of Republicans have a very unfavorable opinion of her. Independents can't stand her. Third-party voters can't stand her. But her own voters like her. They have a favorable opinion of her. And therein lies the difference between Republican and Democrat politicians. Much lower. Much more even. Kevin McCarthy went down below 30 again. Nobody knows who he is, but he's still at 28% favorable. It is what it is. I mean, we've been over this a million times. What do you want to do? The Trump v. Biden or the Biden v. Trump rematch or the generic ballot? What do you guys do? Let's take a little quick vote. I'll look in the comment section real quick. What do you want to do first? Shout it out to me, guys. Let's see. Oop, got a couple generic ballot ones first. What do you think? I didn't look on YouTube yet, but we'll just go with the generic. It looks like the generic. I saw 3 across all platforms, and everybody, I guess they want to kind of leave that for last. All right, look, there is tightening this month. We're just going to show you right now. All right. What happened here is very simple. Democrats really didn't go anywhere. They're still mired in the high 30s, low 40s. There's no surging going on here for Democrats. It's simply a matter of Republican candidates had more support because it may be some of the fear. I would buy that. There are just people now we know, look, they're going to vote Republican. But they're saying, I don't know, I'm undecided. Republicans simply fell. Others went to, they're still carrying independents. It's just not a huge margin anymore. They're identical crossover, which was interesting, right? Totally identical. But there's a lot more independents who are either saying, maybe somebody else or undecided. There's more Republicans who are saying it themselves. Slightly more that are undecided. I don't believe that for a minute. I really don't. Not with how juiced they say they are to vote. It doesn't make sense. But even still, a 2-point Republican win in the popular vote, because this is going to go back up again, both of them are going to go up as we get closer to the election. And a 2 to 3 point, forget a 5-point win is huge, but a 2 to 3 point Republican win is a big deal. All right, let's move over to Trump v. Biden. Actually, let's not yet. Let's look at gender. Republicans are carrying men. Women were about even. Remember that? We're back up to D+4 with women. And men tightened quite a bit. All right. And it's not that they tightened. They just really just didn't say anything. I strongly suspect that many of these are rural and suburban women who told us before they were going to vote Republican. And now they're just back to undecided. I mean, are they really, people? Are they really? I don't think so. I really don't. Well, Rich, is it because of abortion? We'll get there. The short answer is no, it's not. But we'll get there. We can go through a lot. I can't, go through everything. Education is obviously a good one to go through. Republicans are carrying working class. It's just not as big. The some college associate group is a very good group for them right now. They're losing advanced degrees, although not by as much as usual. And the 4-year degree is getting closer. So it's, this is like the working class vote that went back to being extremely undecided. You can look at it across the board here. And I would be more nervous. I would not be, if I was Republicans, I wouldn't be nervous that these people are going to vote against me. I'd just be nervous that they don't vote. So overall, folks, what I'm trying to tell you right now before we even get to most important issues is that the generic ballot is tightening. You have someone like Molinaro who lost. He barely lost. Come on, look at how much he shifted that district. People are making a lot of crap. Molinaro swung Dutchess County. Very impressive. Yes, he's from there, but it doesn't matter. He's a Republican. Delgado used to win these areas. Biden won them against Trump. There was still, nevertheless, an 11-point shift almost in New York 19, the old 19. It is not a good sign for Democrats. It just means maybe what? It's not a mutilation. It's, it's not a bloodbath. It's a thrashing. We don't know yet. What we know is that those voters didn't come out. Molinaro would have won if they did. And Democrats had a structural advantage in turnout. They had primaries, one of which, Pat Ryan, who ran against Molinaro, was running in one of those districts. He won that pretty convincingly, but the other one at least was thought to be competitive. Whereas Republicans and their leaning voters had little reason to vote. And Molinaro, as much of a great guy that he is not exactly someone who's a bomb thrower. So, people, I hate to say it, but, within reason, people are looking for bombs. They are. They are hurting, and they feel like if you're not going to fight for them, then they're not going to give you the time of day. That's the lesson Republicans should be taking to heart here. We'll look exactly at who says, the abortion issue is a big voting issue for them. We'll look at that. That's really not what's happening here. The working class people deciding whether or not they want to vote. That's it. Let's see. Let's see. What would be another one before we get out of here, or whether or not income. Let's take a look at by income. You want to look by income for me? That'd be great. You want to look by income? Thank you. Okay. Republicans always lose the under 30,000. That's not generally considered working class. That's considered poor. All right. The 30 to 50 is where the working class begins, and the 50 to 100% is the prime. And then you have upper middle class. All right. And then you have, pretty much well-to-do. All right. This is where Democrats win, here and here, when they have good elections, if they win them by a lot, right? Republicans have to do very well in these areas in order to offset people who have a ton of money and don't care about inflation, and people who have no money and it doesn't really matter because they're getting assistance anyway. All right? That's just the truth. I'm not there. That was not meant to insult anybody. It was just simply meant to characterize interests. It's called rational voting. 30 to 50 or just under 50, that's the 4-point lead for a 2-point lead for Republicans, excuse me. Or if you were to round, a 3-point lead. 50 to 100%, that's about a 4-point lead for Republicans, or 50 to 100,000. And the 100,000 to 200,000 can be a very strong, so the strongest, which is a 10-point lead, because this group is filled not so much with like educated people who are taking a bunch of money. This is where you find your self-made people that are like, they were not raised or given a lot, and now they're comfortable or they're trying to be comfortable. They tend to vote Republican at pretty decent rates. All right. Let's just go to, what am I at? 1248. Union is what it is. That's going to be what it is. Parental, that's a good one to look at right now. I think Republicans can do a lot more here with parents. They're tied with the school-age children, basically. That's not what happened in Virginia. That should not be the case. It just shouldn't be. They've lost sight of some of the issues that they should be talking about. They fear these issues. Glenn Youngkin did not. All Glenn Youngkin talked about was inflation, and it wasn't gas prices were not that bad back then. It was about food and groceries. Democrats had whacked voters with a grocery store tax. He stuck to it like a madman. He stuck to his guns. He stuck to his message. He talked about the new culture war issues. He was not afraid of these. And because of that, of course he carried this, but he carried especially men in this group overwhelmingly. And this tends to be a decent group for Democrats in Virginia. It's not nationally, but in Virginia, it tends to be. And by the way, when you look at who are these and they're undecided, there's a lot of Republican votes here. There's a lot of Democratic votes here. All right. And then these are, this would be Republican votes. It would. So just keep that in mind. I mean, they kind of got lost in the message here a little bit, guys. They did. Let's look at religion detail. This is interesting. All right, there it is. So Protestants, they're winning by, just almost 20 points. That's to be expected. The Catholic vote here, very important, 46-39. Look, if this keeps up, they're getting crushed among the Jewish vote. They're getting crushed among Muslims. That just happens all the time. Another religion is almost tied. Democrats have a tiny little lead. No religion is Democrat. It's a Democratic voting group. This will absolutely, when this breaks, that will help Republicans. But, they'll win the lion's share of the rest of these. Really what I'm looking at here is this Catholic vote, because they tend to be somewhere in the middle of everybody else. They'll split. If they don't split, and Republicans really do end up winning Catholics by, 7 points, they'll have a good night. It's that simple, especially in battlegrounds, Rust Belt states. That's a problem for Democrats. Even all the way from Virginia to the Carolinas, there are heavy concentrations of Catholic, ethnic Catholic voting groups in these battleground districts. And that will, by the way, in New York 19, the old 19. That's even in the Northeast. There are significant numbers of Italians, Polish, Hispanics. That's what I mean when I say ethnic Catholics. All right. So that's really interesting. Really is. Evangelical, we know how this is going to go. Let's look by area and region before we move on to president. Republicans are killing it among evangelicals, and those who are non-evangelicals are about even. All right. Those who offered no opinion are slightly Democratic. All right. But they're a much, much smaller group. All right. But Republicans are winning the suburbs. So I'm looking at some of the structural stuff here. Right. But where are they deficient? Where they're normally kill it in the rural areas. All right. Democrats aren't going to do much better there. It's a matter of these voters saying, I don't know if I'm going to vote, or now I'm undecided. I just don't believe that they are. Now, there's a very real question about whether they will vote. That is significant. This poll is about R+1. The likely voter model is about R+1. It should have been R+2. Honestly, if Republicans really were rompy this year and they had all the advantages they did, you would have independents citing themselves as Republicans, and this electorate could be upwards of R+4. It could. But R+2 would be a good night for Republicans. That would have brought, that lead, to at least 3, which is a good night. I know, Republicans want a 5-point win, and it's doable. It is. All right, let's look at Trump v. Biden, and let's make sure I put this thing out there right. I did, before we do area. Well, why not? Let's start with area. All right. Oh, these are just the leaners. Fanable. Okay, hang on. Sorry about that, guys. Voting likelihood. Where are you? There you are. Trump v. Biden with leaners. Watch it screw up. Oh, of course. I'll get it. It's a little finicky. There we go. Trump v. Biden with leaners. Get out of there. The generic ballot should be below that, actually. I'm screwing everything up. Of course. There we go. Close this up. It's getting a little bit quirky. Save it. And let's go back to Trump v. Biden with leaners. Oh, come on, Rich. You're Russian. You're Russian. Sample sizes, where is it? Unique percentage of valid cases and valid cases. There we go. Okay. What am I doing right now? This is me telling it to include anybody who chose. We can get rid of undecided because that will confuse. You know what? Let me explain this again. I did on Wednesday, but let me do it again. This is called a multiple response variable. What I'm basically saying is take these two questions, and if they chose either Trump or Biden, whoever, on the first round and the second round, combine them, all right, and then give me a total number of valid cases. We don't do it with undecided because if they remain undecided, it will overinflate the undecided number. So when I try to present it to you, I leave that out, all right? So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you. But what I'm basically saying is tell me who initially chose Trump and tell me who initially who later leaned, and then combine them. And let's close the editor. And this should look right now. Yeah, I usually give more than that, and I will. I'll go back and fix it. But, it's Trump +4 with rounding up, all right? It depends, actually, how people want. But it's Trump +4. And 4 point, males going for Donald Trump, females, this is a bit of a difference here. Females are a little bit more, this is totally against media narrative, but it is what it is. They're basically tied. Trump is basically tied with females against Joe Biden. In fact, he has a slight lead with them. When all of them decide, of course, that's going to change. But and so it would with men. Trump would win men by more than this. But for right now, on the generic ballot, Republicans were not able to keep it with women as close, even though they did slightly better with men. All right, but in the end, this is how it goes. This age group, Trump is much closer with this 30 to 44 age group, and he's just winning, 45 to 64 and 65 plus by bigger margins. All right, but what are some of the other things that we wanted to talk about here? Party detail. Let's look at party detail. Trump takes almost 10% of the Democratic Party. Biden takes about 7%. That's about it. Both take, go to third-party candidates about the same when you lean. All right. Trump's got about a 10-point lead with independents, and among those voters who the media told us, so many are still undecided, but this is the vote that, in 2016 they claimed to hurt Hillary Clinton, and I think it did. I think that's correct. The Gary Johnson and Jill Stein vote, some of them are younger voters that Democrats could have used. But now they're about even it's a small sample, but this has been happening even when they've been more like 5% instead of 2% there, which is what they are this month. These people are anywhere between 2 and 7. That's the range we found. And generally between 3, I would say the average is somewhere around like 3.5%, 2.5 to 3.5. In this month, they're about 2. Ideology, obvious here, right? Obvious. Even though Trump does do better with liberals than Republicans, they were only getting about 8%. All right. Interesting here. If you look at some of the white, right? English, Donald Trump was in 2020 would get crushed among self-identified ethnic English, or American, English Americans, what the census says, right? That's the equivalent of that here. But in 2020, he had a lot of problems with them, right? Now, he's doing much better with them. He's doing better with some of these other groups as well. Germans happen to be a large group, and he's crushing Biden. Why does this matter? One word. Pennsylvania. Norwegian, why does it matter? He's ahead by 20 points. Wisconsin. All right. Irish, another one. German, Italian, all of these ethnic Catholic groups. Trump is winning, which was not the case. Ironically, Joe Biden's winning with Russians. I had to do it. I'm sorry. But it's true. What else? What are we looking at here? Let's look at income. I'm almost to the end of the hour already. God, I'm trying to get through as much as possible. Trump keeps it much tighter with people under 30, 30 to 50. He starts to carry. And then from up, and there you go, and there you have it. All right, let's look at some of the working class versus non-working class, or, educated versus non-educated. You see how much better Trump is doing with high school or less. They're both doing very well with some college associates. And actually, he's not doing that horrible with educated people. It's not that bad anymore. In 2020, he was at like 22% with this group. He's getting killed with advanced degrees. Getting killed. And it's just not the case anymore. Even though, believe me, Republicans, you're not going to win this group. You're just not. Oh, I didn't mean that was the wrong one. I meant to go to parental. All right. Older parents, right? 18 who have children 18 or older, Trump is winning them by about the same margin that Republicans are winning them on the generic ballot. However, parents who have children 18, under the 18 and are in school, Trump is winning them by 6 points, whereas Republicans were, about they were like -2. One or more under 18, but not yet school-aged. This was one of the better groups for Democrats on the generic ballot. Trump is winning them. The only one he's losing is I have no kids. It's a big deal. Religion, let's take a look. 10 points instead of 7. A 10-point, almost 10, 9. Lead among Catholics. A slightly bigger lead among Protestants. Little less crushing among Jewish and Muslim voters. And again, small groups. But this other religion, Republicans were down slightly. Trump is not. This group is a Democratic group. No religion. They're the nuns, secular people. They are going to be Democratic. Let's look at evangelical too. Much bigger margin among evangelicals. Democrats were in the low 30s, but nevertheless in the 30s among evangelicals. And Republicans were in the high 50s. Now, is it going to end up like that? No. I'm just saying right now, Trump is running more consolidated. All right. Even among, by the way, voters who are Protestant and Christian, but not evangelicals, Trump is still winning. If you remember, Republicans were not. area. Trump's not doing bad in urban America. He's not. He's got a lead in the burbs, which is all anyone should care about, 6-point lead in the burbs, and the rural vote. Democratic support in rural America is overstated. When we get down to the statewide polls, it is easier to deal with this issue. But in a national poll, it's a little bit tougher, and it may, overstate Republicans in urban areas while overstating Democrats in rural, and then work its way out in the end. It just works. It works out correct because there are always higher sampling errors for subgroups anyway. But in the case of what we're seeing here, again, I think what you're seeing is quite a bit of a response bias. All right, Trump would be higher than that when, of course, we know he is. By region, Trump is keeping the Northeast very close, although when they decide, of course, Biden would win that. I have no doubt. The Midwest, Biden is keeping very close. That's because of how well he is doing in Minnesota still, by the way. I wanted to point that out. But in the South, of course, it's Trump territory, and Trump is keeping the West close, which is usually Democratic. What does this mean? This means Arizona's gone. This means Nevada is gone. This means Colorado is closer. New Mexico may be closer. I don't think they're gone. They're very young states. Right? Yeah, so there we have it. All right, we're at the 103 mark. I am going to take my little break. All right. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the social bias indicators, and we'll take a look at, issues, most important issues. And then we'll try to get to some of your questions. And actually, I can get through, the social bias indicators pretty well. I really want to focus on only 2 of them anyway. And the most important issue, what you will see with this, most important issues, is that abortion is not skyrocketing. And we'll look at who is saying abortion's my number 1 issue. All right. What's happening here is that Republicans fell. Democrats, they rose a little bit, like a point. What, a point from last month? Republicans fell 5 points. And it's because of people saying, I don't know if I'm going to vote. I don't know. I'm undecided. It's a combination of this stuff. But it is, the good news for them is it is correctable. It absolutely is. They just have to understand what the real root cause is before they try to correct it. All right, stay tuned. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. We'll be back in about 2 minutes, 40 seconds.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me now show me, come blow me away. Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. Told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. Cause I just wanna be your bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And welcome back to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit. You can follow me on Truth and Getter at People's Pundit, on Twitter at People's_Pundit, and on Rumble and YouTube, of course. On YouTube, don't forget to hit that notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. On Rumble, don't forget, it's much easier to find where you should follow us overall, which is right there on peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. Let's get back into it because, man, we are taking up time here. I didn't put them in order yet. All right. They're in alphabetical order. All right. Let's see if I can actually zoom out just a hair so we can see more because there's so many. Inflation, excuse me. Inflation and cost of living is still by far the number one issue at 31%. Economy and jobs is number 2 at 16. Putting them together, about half of the country, their most important issue is economic. All right. Abortion is basically tied with immigration for third, both at 9%. All right. Let's take a look. By the way, you might notice foreign policy is now down to 2.2. Right? Remember when foreign policy a couple of months ago was what? 9, 10%, something like that? Ukraine. Gun rights in the Second Amendment. Oh, 5%? Where'd those people go? Where'd they go? Let's take a look at education. In fact, well, let's do it both ways. Okay, now I can zoom in a little bit more. Who's concerned with abortion? Right. Let's look at it by detail. The working class doesn't give a damn, do they? Not compared to everything else. There is something interesting here, though. Women are more concerned with men. When you nest them with education and race, which is interesting, it's very clear they're white liberals. There is some too. The moderates about 9%. Look, 17%. 17%. And yet liberals are far less concerned with the economy and inflation. Well, Rich, though, this could juice them up. They're the same people we just went over with the likely voter model and showed you they are going to vote anyway. 2 months ago, it was Ukraine. A month after that, or a month before Dobbs, it was guns. A month before that was Ukraine. These are not people who have been diehard, inflation sucks, I'm voting against Joe. They would never vote against Joe and the Democrats. Never. It is so crystal clear, it's painful. Painful. Love of God. Hispanics don't give a damn at all. Not the big Hispanic groups. Not a single Cuban chose abortion. Not a single friggin' one. 5% of Mexican voters, which is the largest Hispanic voting group, they chose it. Puerto Ricans chose it at higher rates, and so did some of these others because, and they're small samples. Because Puerto Ricans are among the most liberal Hispanic groups. Not a single Venezuelan chose abortion. Come on. 1 response from a Guatemalan. Come on. What are they choosing? Every single, there's not many, but Argentine too, 100%. Cost of living. Colombian, cost of living, and election reforms and integrity. Cuban, 28% cost of living. 15% economy and jobs. Mexican, 24% cost of living. 23% economy and jobs. 6% crime. Higher than, some of these other groups for abortion. Other Hispanic, Spanish, or Latino group, 30% crime, policing, and safety, 21% cost of living, 9% economy and jobs. Give me a damn break. Venezuelan, 35% cost of living, 30% economy and jobs. Almost every single one of them chose economic issues. Give me a damn break. Watch this. Among the most liberal ethnic white group, abortion. Swedes. I'm actually surprised that English is so low. They tend to be like, the waspies. You know what I mean? The truth is Hispanics don't care because they don't get abortions. And neither do Asians, but Asians are more liberal. Filipinos, among the most liberal of Asian groups, 21.3%. Even though still 27% chose inflation. Party detail. Less than 6% of Republicans, 9% of independents. It's coming from Democrats, folks. Coming from Democrats. You can see it clear as day. Democrats and Democratic-leaning people. I mean, I don't really know how, what else I can do to show you this. Secular Jews, 18%. Not Protestants, not Catholics. Muslims are a little higher. I suspect, who knows? Maybe some of them don't want abortion. But because they're a liberal group, they may just be going with, it's secular, it's Jewish, which is, in this country, a liberal vote, and it's no religion. The main drivers choosing abortion. Do you all see this rather clearly? Let me know in the comment sections. Am I making this clear enough? Do you see what I'm talking about? This is a liberal, basically a liberal only issue. I don't know how much more I could show to make this clear. I mean, it's so clear. Now, there is some by area if you look, though. In the suburbs, it's kind of funny because it's them wherever they are. You know what I mean? It's interesting to see it this way. But rural America is more concerned about inflation than the rest of America. But I think that's obvious. The problem Republicans find themselves in has nothing to do with persuadable people. All of a sudden now, running to abort. That's not what's happening here. The problem is they are not making their own case. Like Democrats are making their case for what is unpopular. Unfettered abortion is unpopular. But they're making their case. So they're trying to motivate their base. Republicans are not. They're running. They're afraid. As they typically are. Make the damn case. All right. So it is 1:16. Let's get down to, wait. Cost of living detail. before everyone else figured out what we already knew at the Public Polling Project, and you knew watching, inflation was surging. It was long before gas prices really, not long before, but before gas prices became the central focus of that issue of inflation. Republicans fell into a trap because they centered only around gas prices, which obviously, there's a lot that go into it, but it's cyclical. And before an election, we head into the summer driving season, which drives gas prices up even more. And as you start to come out of the summer, people drive less and gas prices go down. It happens every year, but they just focused too much on gas and not enough of which one was really the original concern with inflation, which was food and groceries. That was more than gas. More often than gas, the top cause for concern when it came for inflation. You remember we did that one Public Polling Project study where we looked at, stapled goods. Are you experiencing shortages? Tell me how much more you're paying for them. Is it significant? Is it, moderate? Are you not experiencing any price increases? Food was the worst. From the grocery store to the gas pump and all the way home, housing and shelter has now basically tied gas because housing and shelter was a big deal before gas became the central focus point or focal point, whatever. Housing and shelter has been a major problem and is going to be a major problem, according to Bloomberg data and others. Republicans kind of put themselves in this box. Look at how much, there's a difference between suburban and rural concern over food and groceries versus urban. Urban Americans and voters are concerned, but suburbs and rural America, a little bit more concerned. Why is that? Because of how they choose to get their food. It's not every night at the restaurant. You know what I mean? It's not down to the, to Little China to haggle. It's a grocery store, big chain grocery stores, Publix, Harris Teeter, Mayors, whatever. They have had no choice in this new year but to pass, or since the new year, but to pass the cost on to consumers that they had tried in 21 not to give to you. But now they had no choice. They had to do it. So for the entire year, Americans were getting pummeled with ridiculous rate hikes or price hikes on food and groceries. But for a while there, it got overshadowed by gas. If Republicans were smart, they'd refocus again and go back to the original message. It's not just about inflation. Most people are like, the hell is inflation? Cost of living. We are in a cost of living crisis. And you're feeling the pain from the grocery store to the gas pump and all the way home. God! This isn't that hard. I wonder what we could do about that female vote problem. I wonder what Republicans should do about that. Their suburban and female vote problem. I don't have to repeat it. You could see, right? By race, for instance. You have to expand that white vote, don't you? You have to expand that white vote margin. You certainly want to cut in to the Hispanic vote margin. And hell, outside of urban areas, don't you want to win some black votes? By party. You can clearly see that Democrats are concerned about it too. That's probably why Donald Trump is taking twice the number of Democrats from Joe Biden than generic Republicans are taking from generic Democrats. Ideology, right? You see? Because they're speaking, notice conservatives are still a little bit more keen on gas. They're speaking to themselves. which is all right to do, but don't forget, that's why you have a more encompassing message, one that still makes sense. From the grocery store to the gas pump and all the way home. Look at people who have children, they're not in school yet. Look at this. Also extremely worried about housing and shelter. Can I make my payments, my rent payments, my mortgage payment? I got kids now. It's not just about me anymore. And you get it. By region, there's a major, over the Northeast anyway. The Northeast, I'm not surprised to see, still care quite a bit about gas and fuel because they pay a horrible amount. Second being the West. California always leads the way in gas prices. But in the Northeast, they still have, other product, even heating and other stuff that rely on the price of gas and fuel. So oil and natural gas, all that stuff. I mean, everybody does, but I mean, in the Northeast, they just haven't. I'm trying to pick my words wisely here. They haven't converted at a rate like others have to different modes of utility and other stuff. But you see it, and generally speaking, Northeast is more expensive. So is the West when it comes to housing. I'm not at all surprised to see the South less, concerned about housing because it is cheaper in the South. And the Midwest as well, so that all makes a lot of sense to me. The South is more concerned about taxes than anybody else because the South is more Republican, right? But you can't just win on Republicans. You have to win on those people that Republicans claim they want to represent, but leadership doesn't really seem like they do. And it's more than just in the South. So, that's about it, I think, with the numbers for now. It's already almost 1:30 because I have an op-ed I want to read as we discuss what happened last night, all right? I will just say this, though. With my education, especially, one thing real quick. Who's very uncomfortable talking to pollsters? That would be the working class. You can see it right there, clear as freaking day. You see it? Who's scared to be honest about their political beliefs? It's not the advanced degree post-grad people. They're not at all uncomfortable. They're very comfortable than everybody else, and they're the least very uncomfortable. So, or among the very least, but you can clearly see it's highlighted in blue. That's why. It's a problem. Ideologically, right? You see moderates and conservatives a lot more uncomfortable than liberals, right? Even more moderates that may tend to lean, some of those more moderate Republicans, they're scared, man. They're afraid. They are afraid. Believe it. Believe it. And let's talk about why. So last night, I saw a declaration of war on half the population. I think that's pretty much why you have even Main Street journalists from CBS, CNN, right? Expressing concern that what the president did crossed the line. Even though they're liberals, it is not every day that you have them break ranks, only to be bludgeoned by like Claire McCaskill, who came out of nowhere. Supposedly moderate Claire McCaskill ran to Twitter to defend Joe Biden. Let me explain something to you, though, to my Republican audience, the Republican side of my audience. They want you to get violent. This is a trap. Do not respond like that. This is what, I don't know what other words to use. There's no other words to use. This is what authoritarians do when they can't answer for all of the stuff we were just talking about. Ridiculous food prices. They isolate a portion of the population and blame them for it, and then hope that population feels threatened and feels backed in a corner. Therefore, they lash out And then that totalitarian can say, I told you. These people are a problem. There's a great article that my buddy Steve Cortez wrote. I want to share it with you as we play along with some clips, okay? Because I think he hit basically everything when he was writing this article. And then the rest of it, I just want to leave you with, he's going to round it out too like this, but I want to say up front, they want the other to lash out and do something stupid. You would be foolish to do it. That is a regime that is afraid. They are afraid of November. Contrary to what their hack forecasters and fake pollsters say, they're terrified. And they are also feeling as if there's not a lot that can be done outside of an election to stop them. So they need to poke you. You know, honestly, ironically, it's a tactic that like white supremacists, always talked about developing, that they could create an event that gets like the Zog to take their mask off and show people what they really are. The media, the banking sector, controlled by all of these others who are, trying to keep the majority down. And it is extremely fascist in nature. If you didn't get a Fourth Reich kind of feel, not just from the optics, but from the language, then you weren't paying attention. It also is absolutely a green light to indict Donald Trump. That is, at this point, that's going to happen. And they know they can't stop him. When you see, again, I can't talk about it much in detail, but when you see the PA poll later, you think they don't see this? In 2020, polling Pennsylvania, it was always very close. 2 points one way, 2 points the other way, 1 point one way, 1 point the other. Always very close. It is not all that close anymore. And I don't know how you make that up. It's looking like an R+1 electorate that's really pissed off and has the majority of independents with them. All right. Boom. Let's go to my buddy Steve Cortez, who wrote this article, Our Response to Biden's Red Sermon. Biden darkly escalates because permanent Washington loses its grip on power. And as we do this, I'm going to play a couple clips as we go. Joe Biden has spent a half century in elected office in Washington, D.C. Until last night, his only real legacy involved collecting substantial personal wealth for himself and his family. After all, he was an unremarkable corporatist senator from Delaware who capably represented mammoth multinationals, but he mattered little legislatively. He was then a largely ignored vice president who doddered in political obscurity, even as he secretly maneuvered with his son to establish lucrative business ties with the most dangerous regimes on the planet. But now, Joe Biden makes his mark and solidifies his ignoble legacy as the first U.S. president to explicitly denigrate tens of millions of citizens in a fascistic and incendiary speech targeting masses of regular citizens as criminals. Oh, make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, that is what he did last night. Against a blood red backdrop, which CNN Vizartied the ad of to make look plum, against a blood red backdrop that would embarrass the Ministry of Information of North Korea, Biden used Marines as props and desecrated one of the most sacred places in our republic, Independence Hall, to demonize the overwhelming majority of Americans who reject his dismal mismanagement of our homeland. His sinister threats in Philadelphia began with this indictment of an entire political movement. Quote, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundation of our republic.
That's why respected conservatives like Federal Circuit Court Judge Michael Ludwig has called Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans, quote, a clear and present danger to our democracy.
A clear and present danger to our democracy. Folks, do you know what happens to targets designated clear and present danger by the U.S. government? They get drone striked into vaporization. Just days earlier, this same embittered dolt threatened regular Americans who embrace their God-given right to bear arms. Biden mocked the idea of self-defense against tyranny by implicitly threatening to use the state's weapons of war against citizens, stating that to counter such despotism, Americans would, quote, need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. He posted a social media dismissal of the entire America First movement as, quote, backwards, full of anger, violent, hate, and division.
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale we use. That's used.
First of all, before I continue, I'm not even sure that's true. I mean, we all understand what he means by that. That is a threat. But, of course, I'm not even sure that that's true. America couldn't beat a bunch of sandal-wearing goat herders in Afghanistan who, basically run poppy for side money. They're going to take out the boys in the bayou of, like, Louisiana. I don't think so. I'm less confident. General Milley is too concerned about white rage to learn how to actually fight a war, which is why we keep losing. From Ukraine to Afghanistan to Iraq to Vietnam to North Korea. All technological supremacy, air supremacy, range supremacy, T-50 supremacy. They can't get it done. Such menacing attacks upon a free people can easily dispirit the psyche of a country that increasingly descends into oligarchy. But in a sense, this kind of brazen bullying should actually reinforce the will of citizens to reclaim our country, to restore our prosperity, and reestablish our sovereignty. In many ways, this escalating bellicosity from the Biden regime represents the last gasps of a ruling class that has simply pushed the people too far. By the way, look, these are not the comments. This is not the posture of a regime that feels credible and in control. We simply cannot continue, and they know this, with an oligarchy like this, and we are in an oligarchy. When 0.5% of the country owns more assets than the bottom 90, it's an oligarchy. The combination of a radical leftist cultural agenda plus economic calamity in America sends Biden's approval to record lows. In fact, in the latest Reuters Ipsos poll, Biden sits at a stunning 20 points underwater on the approve-disapprove ratio at 38.58. Incredibly, he lost a net 7 on that ratio in just the last week. And the latest survey was taken before his dark sermon in red. Certainly, we patriotic populists should take these direct threats from the White House seriously. The power of the state to abuse our rights remains vast, as seen in the corrupt tactics of the formerly revered FBI, which now acts as a political police force for permanent Washington. But simultaneously, we must recognize that we witness right now the political equivalent of a supernova. When some large star dies, the outer layers explode as a supernova, creating enormous energy in the last burst before the star collapses. If our movement remains focused and refuses to take the bait from Biden to engage in any illegal resistance to the regime, then we will ensure that the DC globalist corporatist leftism will crumble into a political black hole. What are the strategies to ensure our victory over this clear, aggressive despotism? And he runs down a list of it. Well, if you subscribe, more like a signal, not noise thing from, like a Bannon. He has been saying from the jump, inflation and immigration, Inflation and immigration. The two I's. Inflation and immigration. Immigration and border security is still one of the lowest, and has been for a while, measured approval ratings for Joe Biden. It is second only, to his handling of economic issues. Inflation, Joe Biden sits below 30%. They want you to do something dumb. They want MAGA America to do something dumb. Look at what they did with January 6th. In 2017, liberal groups could gather together in D.C. and try to burn the Capitol down, turn over cars, light them on fire, get violent with other people. They can chase Jeff Flake into an elevator and cower the guy in the corner. They could do whatever the hell they want. But if a right-wing protest gets out of control in any way, it's an insurrection. Even when police officers shoot unarmed protesters who did not pose a threat to the police. Imagine what they will do if they do, quote, like Steve says, quote, take the bait. Imagine what they will do to MAGA then. This was Joe Biden's way of saying, I'm going to indict Donald Trump. I hope you react like a bunch of idiots so I can indict you too, and then take that event and use it against you in November. Because I need to distract people away from inflation. I need to distract people away from the new culture issues, the new culture wars that are scaring Hispanics in droves to the Republican Party. We need to talk about something else. MAGA is dangerous. It's a clear and present danger. And oh, by the way, Dobbs. They want to scare you, depress you, and keep you home. And anyone who does do anything stupid, they're going to use as a foil. Donald Trump is just in the way. By the way, I want to play something that's about a minute, and I want to say something about the hypocrisy of all of this.
The great and original champion of our party, Abraham Lincoln, was defeated in elections for the Senate and the House before he won the most important election of all. Lincoln ultimately prevailed, he saved our Union, and he defined our obligation as Americans for all of history. Speaking at Gettysburg of the great task remaining before us, Lincoln said that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. As we meet here tonight, that remains our greatest and most important task. Most of world history is a story of violent conflict, of servitude and suffering.
It's funny. Liz Cheney identifies as Abraham Lincoln, hasn't said a blip about this, has she? She wants to invoke Abraham Lincoln. Not even Abraham Lincoln spoke about Southerners the way that Joe Biden spoke about MAGA America last night. When asked by a reporter, and I quote, "What are you going to do to those rebellious Southerners? How are you going to treat them when they come back?" "I will treat them as if they had never gone away." Lincoln never used groups of people in open rebellion as a way to justify his failures. He never taught, and look, those of you who know me know I'm not particularly a fan of Abraham Lincoln. being in a civil war does not give you the right to suspend entire parts of the Constitution. But Lincoln was harder on journalists than he was on Southerners. You print something he doesn't like, he may wind up doing something. But he was not going to create a second-class group of citizens that he could target and persecute. And in fact, this is a whole big lost history of the United States that we really don't talk enough about. I often wonder whether or not we would have an entire main political party in this country, one of two, rely solely on racial division for political power had Lincoln not been killed. Because Lincoln's plan for Reconstruction looked a lot different like the nutcase progressives he had in his own party and what they ended up doing after he was dead. He had no intention of punishing them. He had no intention of branding these people the other and going after them. But that is what happened. People often pretend in modern political discourse, the Barack Obamas and everybody and the reporters, they often pretend like somehow we went from like the Civil War to Jim Crow and there was nothing in between. But that's not true. A lot happened in between that turned the South once again against the North and decided, Democrats, by the way, that someone else was really to blame. And because of that, they needed to be punished. After Lincoln was killed and the radicals got a hold of Reconstruction, they began to punish Southerners. There are burn marks on buildings in Savannah to this day where a now famed general who has all sorts of weapons named after him burnt people's homes to the ground. Northern soldiers raped Southern women. They stole property from wealthy Southern landowners to give to others. They persecuted the South. They made veterans of the Civil War pay for the very first pension program ever in the United States, the Grand Army of the Republic. Only Union veterans were entitled to those benefits, but the South had to pay for them. After a couple decades of this, that became the final straw. And what was once multiracial state legislatures all across the country in the South, again, became exclusive institutions. And the rise of what we call redeemer governments led to the institution of Jim Crow. The South will rise again. Who will defend us? Who will reinstate us as first-class citizens? Maybe a little bit hard to believe for us today, but that sounded pretty good to the Southerners back then. They were living under a northern hell, an order of persecution. And that's how we got Jim Crow. It didn't come out of nowhere. It's not as if the South didn't ever try. That's why you hear from Tim Scott's the first black Republican elected since Reconstruction. Because Redeemer governments came in. And it changed not just the political environment in the South, but all over the nation. There were Northerners who disagreed with what they were doing to the Southern states. That gets lost, unfortunately. Because it wasn't inevitable. But it did happen. And there's no way Lincoln would have stood for that. It would never have happened. So if Lincoln was never killed, would there have ever been Redeemer governments in the South? I would argue no. There would not have been. There would not have been. And today we would not be the only, forget about Western civilization country, the only developed nation the only democracy who has this dark element in its politics, who not only doesn't want to see racial division disappear. They don't really want to see true integration because they rely on it politically to survive. They cannot win elections without it. We know this. As a pollster, I know this. You know it. Is leftism more popular? No, it's not. How many surveys have you seen where socialism was more popular than capitalism? It's not. Yet somehow that march continues because they effectively use an other to distract certain groups of people from making a rational policy decision when voting. Now they're taking it to another step. What you heard last night, that was another step. That's no longer just about race. That's about thought. That's about your right to dissent. They don't give a damn whether or not you're labeled MAGA or not. Can you go find a definition of what constitutes MAGA and extremism? What about MAGA even makes it extreme? Go find it on the White House. I dare you. That is a brush, a broad brush to paint just about anyone who disagrees. And we know that that will happen. We've seen it. You're beloved by them, but you step out of line for a second, they destroy you. You're hated by them, but you renounce Donald Trump and MAGA, and now you're in their good graces again. There is no sin too great, too egregious, that they cannot forgive you for as long as you absolutely denounce MAGA and Donald Trump. As Tim Pool wrote on his Twitter feed, this is a real problem we have here because MAGA is more popular than it ever has been. It is not an incorrect statement to make, to say that the Republican Party, that other 50%, is more MAGA today than it has ever been, even in 2016. A simple endorsement record. Vote shares between Trump in primaries and his candidates. They all clearly suggest that the Republican Party, their other, is more make America great again than it was traditional or institutional Republican. They have lost their grip. So what he's seriously suggesting is that the government declare war on half the damn population. And when even liberal journalists say, I don't like this, Ed O'Keefe, that guy is a shill among shills. And I say that one's a man's man. Well, that's a shiller shill. And yet he was horrified. That should tell you everything you need to know. All right. Let me see what we could be doing here. And I want to get to just, some of the conversation in the last couple of minutes. Mistakes, optically, fallout. That's optic mistakes and verbal mistakes, but I don't really think they were mistakes to them. They meant to attach Republican to MAGA. They meant to do it because what they're trying to do is isolate MAGA from everyone else. So, yes, the institutional or traditional Republican, they're a lot less than they were 6 years ago, without a doubt. But they would still love to peel them away from MAGA. They would love that. Love it. And as much as they can isolate, the better. Because when they finally make their move, they're going to need a lot of people to kind of like stand back. And that's why I'm whacking on Conservative Inc. so bad. They're a bunch of cowards. They always have been a bunch of cowards. Those are the people he's talking. That was his target, Fallout. The Ben Shapiros, the Jonah Goldbergs. That's his target. He'll say something, maybe not actually, not Jonah Goldberg, but, you'll have people say, like a Ben Shapiro, this was the scariest speech I've ever seen in my life. And, Meghan McCain, like, this was wholly inappropriate, You're full of crap. If that's your reaction, you don't get it. You don't see what's happening. You're still living in like Ronald Reagan's America. That is not what the times call for. And they're not going to save you. They do not wait around for these people to save you. They come across to the country as selfish, greedy, bitter little elites pretending not to be elites. They're going to run Pence Haley ticket. They can run around with Ben Shapiro's stupid little slogan. The fact is, I don't care about your feelings. Maybe he can bring Romney back and the two of them can talk about 47% together. And Republican leadership's not going to save you either. Let's go look at Kevin McCarthy's response to this. Rick Scott had a much stronger response, by the way. But let's look at Kevin McCarthy's response. Now, at least he made a damn response. All right? Where Mitch McConnell was asleep for a hot minute. But I'll read it to you right now. Actually, I'll show it to you. I just don't want to show you anything from somebody. I don't want to abuse anybody's expectations of privacy here. But instead of trying to bring our country together, did I put it on there? No. Instead of trying to bring our country together to solve the many problems he has created, President Biden has chosen to divide, demean, and disparage his fellow Americans simply because they disagree with his policies. Mr. President, you owe millions of Americans an apology. An apology? Do you seriously think he's going to give Americans an apology? Now let's look at somebody else's response. All right. There it is. The regime is terrified. All of this is designed to provoke and intimidate. Exactly. See, Joe Kent was a Green Beret, so he knows all about psychological warfare. This was meant for two reactions. One, intimidation, and two, to provoke you to do something dumb. All of this is designed to provoke and intimidate. And if they were confident in their platform and ability to win, this would be unnecessary. That is so true. Steady pressure, our momentum is building. Stay engaged, alert, and positive. Lots of work remains, but we are winning. Let's look at another one. I'm showing you the difference here in mentality that some in the new right, they understand what they heard, where these other idiots don't understand it. And they're not going to save you from it because they're going to get railroaded by it themselves. Or they'll bend over for it. I can't believe this is a real photograph. It depicts the president of our nation as he took to the airwaves and spoke about his fellow citizens as if they were sewer rats. That would be the correct response. Look, you got the shock troops in the back. You got the SS, the storm troops, right? This is like a combo of like Hitler and Emperor Palpatine. But you can see the difference in the mentality. McCarthy asked for an apology. America First knows the president just declared war on them. But the most effective thing that MAGA can do is not rile up when they come to get Donald Trump, not to flip out, not to get violent, although I feel like it's happening. You bet a false flag is coming, Jason. You better believe it is. The best thing they could do is stay focused, look like the responsible governing party, and kick the crap out of them in November. That is the best thing that could happen, because they will look like crazy authoritarians, and you will look like, or Republicans in general will look like they were still the only ones who believed in the system. Something absolutely is going to happen. But this is why I've been saying for so long, I am not sure it's possible for Republicans to become what they could become, and thus, at least according to them, do the good that they think they could do with the current leadership. Neither one of them get it. They just don't. And no matter what happens, they're always going to be creatures of the system. They're not going to represent the modern American Republican voter, the base, the coalition. They won't. They will not change. And no amount of stupid little preserve your documents, Merrick Garland, they're not afraid of you. Be very clear. They're not afraid of you. They should be, but for the right reasons. Because the Congress will come in and hold them accountable. Not because you'll have some kind of outburst where I'm telling you, Joe is 100% correct. They're trying to provoke and intimidate. Two ways. Scare you out or provoke you out. Both is preferable. And if they poke the bear, the bear winds up turning around and swats at them, they're going to show everybody, look, see, the bear is wild and has to be put down. I told you, look at me. It's uncivilized. It's a creature. There's no place in our civilization for it. We can't expect it to live in our very civilized society. I'll have to call the warden to put it down. All right. So with that, I leave you with the weekend. Let me get back to helping CD get this poll out in Pennsylvania. Keep an eye on that. And when you see it, you will see exactly why they absolutely are going to try to indict Donald Trump. They simply cannot stop him using any democratic process. The January 6th Commission abused their authority horribly. And yet still, it's not going to get it done. Election-wise, they cannot pull. You get one mulligan. I'm just leaving it there. You cannot get... they cannot stop him at the ballot box. And I'm telling you, as somebody who pulled 2022, or 2020, get it? T-O-O. It was always close. It was close. This is not. And they know it. I wouldn't be surprised if a Republican majority subpoenaed White House records to Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray, and there were literally polling results attached to an email that says, when the hell are you going to indict this guy? He's going to kick our ass. Mark my words. I bet you it's there. I bet you. Watch. 16 months from now, we're going to be looking at that document. Watch. And this is another thing. I'll say this last before I go. Republicans should stop talking about socialism. If in case last night was no... didn't turn on the light bulb in your head. Socialism has many forms. Communism, like they used to call Obama all the time, is public ownership of private sector and control, of course, labor and capital. Fascism is when the government controls the private sector, but it doesn't own it. They're just figureheads pretending to be independent actors, but they are absolutely taking direction from the regime and doing the bidding of the state, reacting and acting in according with the needs of the state. For instance, when the White House contacts Facebook and goes, hey, take this down, and they take it down, that's fascism. When the White House tells the healthcare sector, or the government tells the healthcare sector what to do, that's fascism. When they tell manufacturing base what to produce, that's fascism. See, we have this like incorrect definition of fascism in our head. It's an economic and political system, and it is the platform of the modern Democratic Party. That word at least scares Americans. There is nothing inherently racial about fascism. Nazism's breed or flavor of fascism had a racial component, but it doesn't require a racial component to be fascist. And in fact, where we're headed right now is almost worse than having a racial component, because it's really more about a thought. Your race isn't the problem. Your tribe isn't the problem. It's what makes you a tribe. Your values. Your persistent, annoying desire to think for yourself. That is the other, or the primary cause of what defines the other. You don't think January 6th was an attempted insurrection? Well then, you're MAGA extreme, and you are not compatible with our society. Dangerous stuff, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Don't forget to follow me on Truth and Getter. That's where you'll see me post out when the CD Media stuff goes up anyway. You should check them out, though, too. Of course, cdm.press. That's a shortcut URL. Take you right there. But you can follow me on Truth and Social at People's Pundit, on Getter at People's_Pundit, and, of course, subscribe to my Rumble and YouTube. When you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. All right. But the best place to follow me, of course, is right there. peoplespundit.locals.com. Community's had great growth. Love you guys for it. On Sunday, don't forget, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know it's a Labor Day weekend, but so far we didn't have too many cancellations. Mists of Empire, Jack Snyder. We are currently about to go into Soviet politics and strategic learning, which is Jack Snyder. By the way, miss. Perfect example of this book is so prescient today. He argues much differently than a traditional realist about why states overextend in foreign policy, get too aggressive, meaning they overextend empire, and ultimately collapse. All right. Or what they do is provoke balancing coalitions against them from their competing states, and those balancing coalitions prove to be too great together for that state to compete and or defeat in a conflict. All right. So in them, he argues about different systems of government. And what is so impressive about this is that it was written in 1993, and you can spot the cartel, which he calls a cartelized system. You can spot the log rolling special interests of the cartel a mile away once you learn about it. All right. Once you learn how to hear what a myth is, what is a myth, you'll hear them everywhere. Every time you turn on the channel, every time you turn on cable news, which, God, I hope you don't do. But every time you do, or a political leader tweets some stupid, ironic, ignoramus statement, you'll know it when you hear it. And you'll say, oh, that's a myth, you lying son of a... Right? All right. So with that in mind, again, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Keep an eye out for Pennsylvania, guys. We've got top issues in Pennsylvania, generic ballot in Pennsylvania. We have the Senate race in Pennsylvania, the gubernatorial election in Pennsylvania, Joe Biden's approval rating in Pennsylvania, and, of course, the Trump v. Biden rematch in Pennsylvania, which, again, you guys must see TV over there. All right. All right. It's 2:07. I'll let you all roll. If I don't see you on tomorrow or on Sunday, have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Monday. All the best, folks. All the best.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me.